Good afternoon. I'd like to thank everyone for coming. For those of you here that I haven't met yet, I am Sergeant Randy HUSERIK. I think I've talked to many of you on the phone or emailed back and forth. This is me, and this is what I look like without a mask on. Today I'm going to have Chief Adrian Diaz, Assistant Chief Tom Haffey, Captain Mike Edwards, and I believe Lieutenant John Brooks from the CRG available here to speak. So without any further ado, here is Seattle Police Chief Adrian Diaz.
Thank you, Sergeant HUSERIK. Hello, and thank you for joining us today. Today marks 1 week since the launch of our new community response group. We want to provide you more information about the community response group and what they're doing. This team of officers are part of my commitment to focusing on our core mission of responding to community calls for help and working with community to address problems to prevent crime. Their work will be driven by community needs and will be done with the community. I asked these officers to volunteer for this work because we need a team that can address the needs that weren't tied to the artificial boundaries of a precinct. These officers are available to handle 911 calls citywide, with their commanders seeking direct input from the precinct commanders and community stakeholders to identify emerging and persistent issues that the community response group can address to reduce problematic behaviors. Last week at the start of the CRG shift, the team of officers held their roll call at Hing Hay Park in the middle of Chinatown's International District. As they went to work, they spent their first part of their shift speaking with business owners and checking on locations and just talking with people who live and work in the community. This is a model I want all of our patrol work to follow. The community response group can do this because of their staffing and because there were enough patrol officers to handle all of the incoming calls, emergency calls, that we have at every moment of the day. That is why I'm pushing for more officers into patrol. If SBD is able to have a sufficient number of officers in patrol, we can do this sort of community building and community work while still getting to emergency calls in less than 7 minutes. And to that end, in the first week, the community response group officers have gone to over 400 incidences, and they're getting into priority 1 calls in under 7 minutes. In the first week, the community response group was critical in handling an unusually busy Friday night. We had multiple shootings, we had a homicide, we had several critical traffic accidents, and we also had protests. The community response group helped ensure that all of those critical calls, along with more routine, got a response. This work included making over 40 arrests, included 6 for unlawful possession of firearms, 7 felony warrants, an in-progress burglary, and 2 motor vehicle thefts. And they worked with patrol and other units to recover over 100 shell casings from gun violence across the city. And while they're supporting patrol squads, they've also been invaluable at ensuring there can be safe and peaceful First Amendment demonstrations across this city. The Seattle Police Department as always will support the First Amendment rights of assembly and free speech. As I've made it clear before, however, if members of this demonstration start to engage in violence or criminal behavior, turning them into riots, focusing on destruction and assaulting officers, that will not be tolerated, and we will respond appropriately. If you look at the events over the past week, this consistent approach to the ongoing demonstrations and riots is setting clear standards of behavior. And I believe we're starting to see a shift. We're having to directly engage these groups less and less, and we are seeing less destruction occurring. This first week of focusing on the importance of patrol, I think it makes it clear that when we are properly staffed, it is clear our amazing patrol officers can and will do the necessary and good work of building solutions with community. I would now like to introduce Captain Mike Edwards, who is the commander of the Community Response Group, to provide you with more details about the work and the team is doing and where he sees the team focused on moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, everybody. Good afternoon. Community response group concept is not something new. It's been an idea that SPD has been looking at for quite some time. SPD is known for innovation, creativity. This is a result of the hard work by a lot of very smart people, to come up with a new way to address the community needs. We were stretched very thin. Our 911 response, especially to priority 1 calls, was at a point where it was just unacceptable. The chief decided that we needed to come up with a new solution on how to address that. The community response group is made up of officers from across all precincts, but is not tied to any single precinct. It is a citywide response team. So what will happen functionally is we look at analytics based on the data pools that we have. We use predictive analytics as well to determine where best to place the officers at the start of the shift. They may be one day in the North Precinct, the next day in the South Precinct. It is based purely on the data that we have. Also, during the course of the shift, supervisors are constantly in contact with other supervisors in the precincts to determine the call loads, what's going on, the level of activities, and will shift resources accordingly. We also respond to those high priority calls, as the chief said, and our response time is now down to roughly 6 minutes. So our response time has improved dramatically with this concept and this team. The team is a multidisciplinary team approach. Individuals in this team are bicycle officers, so they have the ability to scale to that if needed. Obviously, our vehicles, we're paired up, so we are fully self-contained in those units. The primary and backup are right there on scene, arriving at the exact same time. We handle the calls for patrol, but we also assist patrol in the calls they are on. So we back them, we give them additional resources, we bring those skill sets there, but at the same time, we try and take that load off. So if there's a stacking of calls that appears to be going on when the CRG starts, they will handle that issue first. If there are priority calls that are going on, they will handle that. If there are neither of those occurring, then they are out doing proactive work, community contacts. You heard that we already had a community roll call on the ID. Well, we also had one down in Rainier Valley, and we've had one in Ballard, and that is an ongoing process as well. Community engagement is a core element of this team. We will be looking for opportunities to meet with the public wherever those are. Ongoing training for this team occurs weekly. It is very focused, very specialized. It is everything from recertifications to just that, community engagement, and how we want to make certain that we are doing the best that we possibly can. The way that the work comes into the CRGs beyond the 911 data sets is the precinct captains. Precinct captains will advise us any issues that they have ongoing, any issues that they anticipate will be occurring, or if they have some staffing needs. And we will direct those resources to attend to those. The community advisory groups also have the ability to notify the precincts of things they are seeing, needs they have. And those also will then be funneled to our group, who will then look to resolve community interests and community needs. So far, the members of this team have just completely exceeded all expectations, certainly those that I had, but well beyond that, and it's because of who they are. This police department is made up of exceptional individuals, and all we're seeing in this group is a very focused emblem of that. The Seattle Police Department prides itself, has always prided itself, in doing the best job it possibly can. We will constantly come up with new designs, new elements to improve. We're open to criticism. Clearly, we've had plenty of that over the years, and we try and resolve any issues in a proactive and effective way. This is no different. So again, where this concept is not anything new, the application is very new. The idea that now we have a group, a team of highly skilled professionals who are going to be able to go out and handle issues wherever they present themselves, but not be geographically bound, that is unprecedented. And up to this point, it's been very successful. Lieutenant John Brooks is here, and I'm going to have him come up. I know you have some questions. Lieutenant Brooks is one of the 2 lieutenants directly over the team who is out there during the patrol shift directing the resources and engagements and the involvement. Lieutenant Brooks.
Are there any questions about the group? Sure. Does this group, when responding to demonstrations, have a set incident commander? So, for instance, is it always prepared to develop a strategy to respond to demonstrations when they occur, or do they have to kind of submit to other incident commanders from outside the team?
We do. That was one of the advantages of this group is we basically have a command group that's familiar with demonstration management. That's actually part of this group. Myself and Lieutenant Diamond, we've done a significant number of demonstrations over the summer, and we're very familiar with that operation. We're also very familiar with working within the chains of command, various precinct commands to address any demonstrations that develop. And that's one of the advantages of this group is that virtually all the officers here have extensive experience in demonstration management, and we also have that command group that's part of it, ready-made to address any issue that develops.
Can I ask a follow-up for Chief Diaz?
Sure.
I know that at one point you had said that when transferring officers off of specialized units, they would bring their specialized skills into their patrol duties. Does this unit include, for instance, former homicide detectives, former DV detectives who can bring the specialized skills of those units into this team?
Yeah, so there are some people from that were part of the 100 officers that were moved back into patrol. Some of those did come into CRG, and many of those other groups came in back into patrol. So there are coming with a variety of experience to bring back that knowledge into patrol. But only just a few came into the CRG group from many of the specialized units. And so, but again, it at least offers that level of specialty that many people need.
Is this a response to the lockdowns in either the East Precinct or the West Precinct, which had prevented officers from being deployed? And now you have this roving group that can go to certain events because you weren't able to leave the precinct. Isn't this a result of those protests?
No, really what this has been a focus of is, as I've mentioned many times before, is that we've had a couple demonstrations that we literally had to pull every officer out of patrol to respond. And when it comes to a situation like that where you have no one responding out to if there was a shooting, if there was a robbery, a rape, or whatever call that might end up being, that's a problem. And so that was the need for making sure that we had enough staffing in patrol, but also having the flexibility to also have the CRG group up and running, so that you can also be flexible to adjust. Like Friday night was a great example. We had multiple demonstrations. We had street racing that were potentially going to occur in the north end and then right in front of the Space Needle and an Alki. We also had different demonstrations that were occurring, but we had multiple shootings. We had officers making arrests at the various shootings. We had 3 what we call traffic collision investigations, all within almost an hour period of time. And so we were able to do that with our on-duty resources. So this has been such a need for having sufficient staffing in patrol.
Chief, could you talk to the decision to have roll call in the park and what message you were hoping to send the public, if any, by doing that?
For us, it's, if we find ourselves constantly inside our offices or inside our buildings, that isn't connecting with community. So actually getting out, connecting with businesses, getting out and just talking and walking the footbeat and connecting with people, that's where it's so important. So, having, and this actually was an idea that was comprised of the community response group. It wasn't something I said, this is what I want. They came up and said, look, we want to be more engaged in the community. And I completely agree that this is something that is so valuable for us that we find ourselves maybe a little bit disconnected with the community. And so I think this is a great opportunity for us to just talk with businesses and residents as well.
Are you concerned what could happen to the team depending on what happens with the 2021 budget?
Right now we're working through the 2021 budget to just identifying how many officers we're going to have in our department. Right now, I think it's very clear over the last even weekend with over 140 rounds being fired. A couple homicides. We had one homicide. We had a couple traffic deaths. I mean, this just tells you the need for officers to be out and being engaged and being connected and being able to respond to 911. So yeah, I am concerned when we talk about lessening the size or making the department smaller, because really a Friday night, it tapped almost every level of resource that we had, but we were able to do that because we made these adjustments early on in my tenure.
You mentioned that you're finding there's less confrontations or less demonstrations out there recently. What do you mean by that? Is that more of a manageable situation for SPD, or fewer people out there marching and you're able to contain it?
I think that's a good question for those that are out in the field. But what I've noticed just based on through contacts is we've had a smaller crowd. It's been much more manageable. While they have sought to create that confrontation, we've also taken a different approach to addressing that because we've had sufficient resources. But the lieutenant might be able to talk a little bit more further in detail about that. But I could tell you over the last 10 days, we're not having as much confrontation where we're actually having to engage and create levels of use of force. Do you want to?
The only thing I'd add to the chief is that having this unit and having this capabilities, we're able to put, having the resources available to put out there in the field to address these demonstrations as they develop. Prior to this group forming up, usually it was difficult to get those kinds of resources there and be present. Frankly, just the visibility and presence of the unit on scene is usually enough to deter violence or acts of property destruction. And then along, the chief was referring to as well, we are now addressing specific acts of criminality that do occur. We specifically go in, make that arrest, and processes that we typically would, but that has really reduced the level of violence and property destruction in the community. Yes?
So typically the notion of community policing is centered around neighborhood-based beats. So how does the lack of geographic boundaries help community policing in this context?
So,
I think I can answer that.
oh, yeah, absolutely. I don't mind at all.
So I actually wrote for the COPS office the publication on community policing. So, it really focuses on three things: partnerships, problem solving, and organizational transformation. When you talk about beats, this is really a new mixture of how we actually address it. We still have officers that are focused on the beats at the beat level. So the patrol officers, we still have our first, second, and third watch that are assigned out to the various beats and districts. But we also have this added support level that when we're short-staffed, to say in the North Precinct, we can send a group up there to be able to connect. And plus, it also allows us, because they're actually saying we're going to do roll calls and we're going to connect, they're also taking further steps to engage community in a different manner as well. So it only enhances our ability to really focus on that community policing model. But it is actually more unique than we've seen community policing just from its just districting type of model. And so this is actually an enhancement of that. Any other?
Do you anticipate this going on indefinitely, or is this a quarterly trial period, or what's the long-term forecast for this?
Right now, we see this for the next several months. We're trying to always evaluate it. I mean, right off the bat, in the first week, we've seen our immediate levels of success. And as we get into the new year, we're going to look at how we evaluate that proceeding. Because one of the things is that this also has been a very good opportunity for the officers on a shift level. This is officers working a 4 days on, 3 days off. It gives officers that one extra day of trying to be able to rest and recuperate. That in patrol, they're working a 4 days on, 2 days off shift. And so having that extra day is really more focused on that level of wellness because they are so active and engaged.
Okay, real quickly, Chief, what is the response been from the officers now? I know it's just the weekend, but what are you hearing from the men and women out on the streets with this year?
I'll turn it over. Do you want to talk to it?
I think you might have a better, I think you asked about the department as a whole outside of the CRG.
Right now, I think it has been, I think morale has been, pretty low over the last several months. When I was out actually Friday night because of all the different shootings and the different situations that were going on, and honestly, I saw officers they're just in their element, going out and doing the work. They were happy, they were talking, they were engaged, and I felt like it was a different level of energy and a different level of feeling that they were actually doing something good, and actually going back to doing police work is what they hoped to do. So I feel like that level of energy was actually in the right direction. and not having to handle demonstration after demonstration after demonstration. And so I think if we can get back to police work, that's what we really want to do.
Do you have any sense yet of what the community response is like to the team?
No, I mean, this is still early on, but I know that from feedback that I've already gotten from even the Chinatown International District and others that have emailed me expressing that, hey, we had a whole bunch of officers and they were actually engaging the community. So I received a level of positiveness about that. So we will see what that looks like in the future. But I think just having more officers engage community is extremely important. Maybe one more question? Good? Okay. Thank you, everyone.